Greetings and welcome back to another episode of the Daily Run, and today we're playing as Maggie. Maggie is pretty great, but you know what's even better? When you can reroll her character into literally any other that exists in the game. And you can do that with the help or the usage of the clicker, which is an active item which was added in Afterbirth Plus. So what this item allows you to do is not only to reroll your character into other base characters which you can pick at the start of the game, but it also allows you to reroll yourself into the characters which normally aren't playable. Or at least they are playable, but you can't pick them or choose them when you start a new run, and those characters are like Lazarus II or maybe Dark Judas. So you can see the power of this item, just at least in the sense that there's a potential chance for you to roll into Dark Judas, and that just gives you that innate 2 damage multiplier, and you're just able to deal with enemies much more efficiently that way. And that's exactly what we were going for here, and thankfully that's exactly what happened on our second roll. So we did get quite lucky in this situation, and it's not something that I would expect to work most often, not just because there's so many characters in the game, so you can't really expect that, but there's a downside to using the item, and that is whenever you use the item, one of your items that you have in your inventory, I think is the most recent one, gets taken away. So you don't really want to keep using this indefinitely, so you can expect that as the more times you use it, the less items you'll have, and which means you'll be left in a worse position than you would be otherwise. So that's why it's great that it showed up on the very first floor. We were actually able to get some usage out of it. But as soon as we actually transferred, or at least got a character which wasn't Lilith in this case, because I first rolled into Lilith, then I would just basically stick with that character, and that I would pick up any items that would show up. But of course, in this case, we did get Dark Judas, so that was quite lucky, and probably a bit unwarranted in some cases, because I do imagine that some people probably didn't really play the clicker, or at least try to get this particular character. But thankfully, I think that it's always worth to do it, especially when you don't have no items, since there's always a chance that you're gonna reroll into a better character, or at least a character that's equally good. I think there's a chance to reroll into the Lost, or maybe even the Keeper, which would have been terrible, but then again, you have always another chance to reroll into yet another character and kind of go away from that. So maybe that's what I was going for, and probably what I felt was the right decision, and I think in this particular case it was. Of course, what ends up happening when I said that you lose one item whenever you use the clicker, that makes it for a very potent breaking item. So what a lot of people do is maybe if they find restock, or maybe they found a Steam sale, and they just buy a ton of items from the shop to essentially force some of those really powerful items to show up, something like Mama Meg or maybe the blank card, and in process of doing that, they pick up a ton of different items which you really don't need, and they just add to your item penalty. So what you do at the end is basically have a room with a ton of battery charges, and then you just keep using the clicker to get rid of the items. So you don't even use it for its primary ability to change your character, but you use it to get rid of all your items, and that just reduces your damage penalty to essentially 0. And that's excellent, and that's usually what you would go for if you really want to have a really powerful breaking run. It would allow you to essentially pick up every single item on the path, break the game that way, and then use the clicker to get rid of those. So in some sense, I do like how Afterbirth Plus has added all of these crazy new items which just make it possible for us to have basically perfect scores bar none for time. Now, if there's an item added which allows us to manipulate time, I think that would be like a cherry on top. It would really allow us to break the game. But in some sense, a lot of people do think it's a bit unfair, and I do think it's unfair, but more than that, it's very tedious. Just having to focus on using the clicker in that manner, you know that you have to set everything up, you know that you have to have a room full of battery charges, which sometimes isn't a problem, but if you really want to have the maximum score, you know that there's a person out there who's gonna try really, really hard to complete this objective and have a maximum amount of score possible. That means you also have to do it and go through that tedious process. So for that reason, I wish that clicker was maybe designed a bit differently. I do like its niche use of basically transforming your character into a different one, especially when it shows up in a situation like this. I think this is one of those cases where knowledge pays off, and it's a really good way to gauge how skilled someone is at the game. So if someone knows what the clicker does and how to use it optimally, you would know that if you use it once or twice, it probably has a better chance of giving you something good, or at least something equal, and not something worse. And for that reason, in this case, whoever did use the clicker was rewarded because of that. And I think that's a good that's a good way to test the player's skill and knowledge in some sense. But obviously, if you don't know about how it drains your items and transforms you to a different character, or at least that it has a chance to transform you into Dark Judas, then maybe you didn't get on this, and maybe you didn't deserve it. But then again, that's the common problem of when people aren't aware of what the items effect are, and then that just puts us on unequal ground. So where's the line between where I can say, well, us using the clicker means that we're knowledgeable about the game, and where is the line where I can say, well, us using the clicker leads us into a disposition where it basically rewards unfair players to abuse the system, or at least abuse the item in some way to get a higher score. It's a hard bargain, and like I said, I think it should be removed, at least the aspect of you losing your items, or maybe the item penalty could stay, but you could lose the items to kind of keep in tandem with the game. But with how it works right now, I do agree that it may be a bit too cheeky and a bit too cheesy for everyone's good. But for as far as how this run goes, it actually did go really well. You can see that I have Brimstone plus Stack Axe. The only thing that's disappointing here is that I didn't have more chances to actually use it. I couldn't find a teleport card to teleport out of boss rush after I went to the Mount floor, so I just decided to opt and use the Sacrifice Room to go to the Dark Room, because that's gonna give you more points than just going to the boss rush in this situation, and I was able to complete it and get like something like 30,000 points in total, which is not a good score, but then again, it's not a very bad one. Generally, if you can go to the Dark Room on a mom daily via any sacrifice room, you're pretty much guaranteed to finish in like the top 50 spot for the day, just because people tend not to do that, and maybe a lot of people still don't realize how powerful sacrifice rooms are and how many points they give you. But in this case, it's always better to go for the sacrifice room than go for the boss rush, because it's just gonna net you with more points overall. So our damage penalty was high, our swag bonus was pretty low, but thankfully all the rest was pretty good, because I did tend to do quite a bit of exploration, and thankfully we did have at least some fun items going for us to make this run pop just a little bit. I hope you enjoyed this one, guys, and I hope to see you next time.